gentlemen, of the American flag. I'm going to start with the Pledge to America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, guys, Eddie. And ladies and gentlemen, we're here to continue the ceremony for Memorial Day. As stated before, I am the post commander here in Athens. I do have to leave shortly to conduct the ceremony in Durham for a post out there. In the meantime, I want to thank you for coming. There are many refreshments in here. Once we're done, please feel free to enjoy yourself. We're going to have an invitation here from Pastor John Tate.
Let us bow our heads. God, we ask your blessing
Congrats.
to keep us mindful
Do you have a radio show yet?
of those
No, I don't have a
who
radio
have made
show.
life so
Podcast? I don't have that either.
comfortable
How
for
could you?
us.
Should I have these
That
things?
we would remember with reverence and with sincere gratitude those who have made it possible for us to enjoy freedom. Bless the families of the departed and the unknown ancestors going back to revolutionary times, that we would be grateful and we would feel that sense of duty of doing our part to keep our nation free. All this we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, around you see numerous graves. A lot of them are friends, relatives, neighbors, of those of us from Athens and those of us who have served in the armed forces. We'd like you to remember today, not only for what we have done, but we have a guest speaker today, Mr. Ron Gabriel, who I'm sure the majority of us are familiar with. Mr. Gabriel is going to give a presentation that he gave about a week ago at the Honor Event ceremony in Catskill. It involves not only a neighbor, but a friend. The Gabriel family has been in and around Athens for many, many years and will continue to be. Michael Gabriel was one of our members for this post, so we'd ask you to direct your attention to Mr. Ron Gabriel, and Mr. Gabriel will take you through the rest of it. Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you very much.
What did you do in the war, Daddy? That was a question that was very often asked by children of their fathers during the 1940s and 50s when I grew up here in Athens. I don't know if my cousins, Michael, Sissy, or Louise, ever had that conversation with their dad, my uncle, Mike Gabriel, as they grew up in the lower village on South Franklin Street in the house just above the old firehouse. But as I was growing up in the upper village, Grandma Gabriel, Aunt Frances, my older sisters Teresa and Kathleen, my younger sister Marianne was a little too young to be part of it, but my older sisters and my older folks would say, now, don't ask Uncle Mike about the war. He prefers not to speak about it. Well, in addition to that, Uncle Mike was a man of quiet dignity. He was a gentleman and a gentle man. And so you just had respect. So naturally you respected him, and you wouldn't think to ask questions that you shouldn't ask and intrude on his innermost thoughts. But as I got a little older, Uncle Mike actually did speak a little bit about the war. Now, not as much as he spoke about baseball. I'm here to tell you, if you were growing up here in Athens in the 1930s and 40s, and you were a member of the male species, you better be able to talk baseball, buddy. And if you had any Italian blood in you at all, you put Joe DiMaggio, Phil Rizzuto, and Yogi Berra right up there alongside the Pope. But when Uncle Mike talked about Aspirin was the universal medicine in the Army. No matter what was wrong with you, they gave you an aspirin. Another time he said, you know, Army chow was actually very good food, but it was just so difficult to prepare it well for so many guys at one time. And over the years, I've always been struck by the remarkable maturity of such a statement. And finally, he said, for the invasion of North Africa, we sailed 43 days down in the holds of ships with guys getting seasick. He said it took so long because we had to zigzag all the way due to the danger of U-boats, German submarines. Well, this was November the 8th, 1942, Operation Torch. It's the invasion of North Africa. We landed at Casablanca, Algiers, and Oran. And it's so early in the war, this was our first major operation in the European theater of operations. It's so early that we don't have our bases in England fully set up yet. So this required our guys to sail from the United States all the way to North Africa. Think of that again, 43 days down in the hold of a ship before you ever hit the beaches. Well, as I grew up and became an adult, I came to understand a little bit more about why Uncle Mike and so many veterans were so reluctant to speak about the war itself and all wars. I read the words of a famous general who once said, "No man should ever have to see what a man in combat sees." Well, it all starts on a Friday morning, September the 1st, 1939, at 5:45 a.m., when 44 regular German divisions crossed the German-Polish frontier with the intention of destroying the armed forces of Poland. With this invasion, the world is launched into World War II. 2 years, 3 months, and 7 days later, at 7:55 a.m. Honolulu time, on a particularly beautiful Sunday morning, December the 7th, 1941, 353 Japanese warplanes flying in 2 waves off of 6 fast attack carriers will bomb United States Naval and Army Air Forces based on Oahu, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. With that air raid, the United States of America is thrust into the Second World War. Now that period of time from September 1st of 1939 to Pearl Harbor becomes one of the most divisive and turbulent eras in American history. On one hand, you had the interventionists. These folks wanted America to get into the shooting war in Europe on the side of England. Adamantly opposed to them were the isolationists, led by Charles Lindbergh, the great aviation hero. Those folks absolutely did not want us getting into the war. Well, as the days of 1940 rushed by, more and more Americans came to realize that somehow, some way, and in ways we couldn't imagine, ultimately the United States of America is going to be thrust into that shooting war. And it was a war we were woefully unprepared to fight. After all, America really is a peace-loving nation. After the end of the First World War, we couldn't wait to demobilize our very powerful armed forces. And so we did. So much so that by the year 1939, we had stripped down so much that the United States of America ranked 17th in the world in terms of military power and size of force. In fact, we had ranked right behind Romania. We had less than 200,000 men under arms, and most of those fellows were wearing World War I era doughboy helmets. I actually have a picture of Uncle Mike wearing just such a helmet at Fort Bragg in early 1941 during basic training. Most of those guys were carrying weapons that dated from the turn of the century. mostly 1903 bolt-action rifles. And so Americans realized that it was time, and not much of it, to mobilize for the coming war. As part of the mobilization process, on September 14, 1940, Congress passes the Burke-Wadsworth Act. It goes into effect on October the 16th, 1940, and it institutes the first peacetime draft in American history. Now, the terms of the law are, all eligible men ages 21 to 36 must register for the draft. The terms of enlistment are 1 year of military service, to be served only in the continental United States or in a U.S. territorial possession. The peacetime draftees were not to be sent overseas. As a side note, I might add here, at Pearl Harbor, the term of enlistment changes very dramatically from 1 year to the following. For the duration of the war plus 6 months. Think about that for a minute. In addition to all the other sacrifices these men make, as the war breaks out, they don't even know exactly how long they're in military service for. All they know is they're in service for as long as the war shall last, plus possibly 6 more months. Well, numbers are placed in capsules. Capsules are placed in a gigantic fishbowl in Washington, D.C. On October 29th of 1940, Secretary of War Henry Stimson reaches into that fishbowl and pulls out the first capsule, which he promptly hands to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was seated at a podium behind a bank of radio microphones. There was no television in those days. When President Roosevelt reads that first number, which was 158, immediately 6,175 young men across America are called up to military service. And as each capsule is pulled out of that fishbowl, another 6,175 young men are called into military service. Uncle Mike's number is pulled in the 11th round. He goes into military service February the 7th of 1941. He receives his basic training at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. He will become a member of the 47th Infantry Regiment of the 9th Infantry Division. Now, the 9th was known as the Old Reliables, and reliable they were. They will participate in nearly every major campaign in the European theater of operations. The 9th will miss almost nothing. At this time, I would like to read for you Uncle Mike's citation. Headquarters, 9th Infantry Division, 11 January 1945. Subject, award of the Silver Star to Commanding Officer, 47th Infantry, 9th Infantry Division, APL 9, U.S. Army. Under the provisions of Army Regulation 600-45, as amended, the Silver Star is awarded to Michael J. Gabriel, Staff Sergeant, then Sergeant, 47th Infantry, who distinguished himself by gallantry in action against the enemy on 30 October 1944 in the vicinity of Mossbach, Germany. While in a defensive position, Sergeant Gabriel's company was subjected to an intense enemy mortar and artillery barrage. Learning that vital lines of communication had been severed, Sergeant Gabriel voluntarily left his position of comparative safety to move forward and repair the lines. Although the lines were disrupted a second time after having been serviced, Sergeant Gabriel repeatedly exposed himself to heavy enemy fire to locate the breaks and reestablish communications. Sergeant Gabriel's devotion to duty, complete disregard for personal safety, and courageous actions contributed materially to the success of the operations and were a credit to himself and to the armed forces of the United States. Entered military service from New York by command of Major General Craig. Well, after the war, Uncle Mike returns back home to Athens. He marries his beloved Aunt Peggy Dinkerlap. They will have 3 children, loving and wonderful children, Michael, Regina, known as Sissy, and Louise. They will be adored and adore 5 grandchildren. One time Aunt Peggy said to me, you know, your Uncle Mike is a wonderful family man. Uncle Mike will drive a truck for the Caden Pocketbook Factory right here in Athens, located where the park is now, and also in Hudson. Uncle Mike and so many veterans, after what they had endured for 4 years overseas, come home with one intention, and that is to follow the directives of the Apostle Paul. Twice in the Bible, Paul tells us, live a quiet life. And Uncle Mike Gabriel lived a quiet life. Now, you heard this phrase so frequently, we owe veterans a debt that we can never repay. You've heard that so much that it might become a little routine. But I think that I speak for very many people when I say these words. To Uncle Mike and to every man and woman who ever wore the uniform of the United States of America, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for giving us the freedoms that we enjoy as we live here in the greatest nation planet Earth has ever known. And I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our ceremonies today. You're welcome to come inside for some refreshments.
That looks like